Sorry.
No, that's okay. ঠিক আছে আমাৰ পিছতো আমি ডিসকাস কৰিব পাৰিম।
So we are good to go.
Meeting now streaming on live. Streaming live.
Rishi, we are good to go.
Yes, ma'am. We are live now.
Okay. Okay. So সকলোকে নমস্কাৰ আৰু এনাজৰি প্লেটফৰ্মলৈ সকলোকে আকৌ এবাৰ স্বাগতম জনাইছো। আজি আমাৰ এটো 12 নম্বৰৰ সেশন আৰু আজিৰ সেশনটোত আমি climate change আৰু adaptationৰ বিষয়ে কথা পাতিম। And we are lucky to have Professor N Goswami or BNG among us। আৰু আজিৰ সেশনত তেখেতে উত্তৰ পূৰ্বাঞ্চলৰ জনসাধাৰণে climate changeৰ লগত কেনেদৰে এডাপ্ট কৰিব সেই বিষয়ে আমি মেইনলি কথা পাতিম। তাৰ আগতে প্ৰফেসৰ বিএন গোস্বামীৰ বিষয়ে চমুকৈ অকমান ক'ব খুজিছো। প্ৰফেসৰ গোস্বামীৰ বিষয়ে বেসিক্যালি কৈ শেষ কৰাটো কাইন্ড অফ অসম্ভৱ কথা। তেখেতৰ তথাপিও চমুকৈ তেখেতৰ জন্ম বৰপেটা জিলাৰ পাটবাউসী আৰু তেখেতে বৰপেটা বিদ্যাপীঠ স্কুলৰ পৰা স্কুলিং শেষ কৰি কটন কলেজ আৰু গুৱাহাটী ইউনিভাৰ্চিটিৰ পৰা শিক্ষা সমাপ্ত কৰে। আৰু তেখেতৰ PhD লাভ কৰে 1976 চনত ফিজিক্যাল ৰিসাৰ্চ ল্যাবৰেটৰী অৰ PRL আহমেদাবাদৰ পৰা ইন নন ইণ্ডিয়ান ফিজিক্স। আৰু তাৰ পাছত তেওঁ BNGয়ে জুল চাৰ্নি প্ৰফেসৰ জুল চাৰ্নিৰ লগত MIT post-doctoral research সমাপ্ত কৰে। After coming back to India in 1983, তেখেতে IIT Delhi, ISC আদিৰ দৰে ইনষ্টিটিউটত নিজৰ সেৱা আগবঢ়ায় আৰু 2006 চনত ইণ্ডিয়ান ইনষ্টিটিউট অফ ট্ৰপিকেল মিটিঅৰলজিৰ ডাইৰেক্টৰ হিচাপে জইন কৰে। আৰু তেখেতে IITM জইন কৰাৰ পাছত he has converted the institute as a state-of-the-art institute in climate research, and also he has changed the course of Indian monsoon research by heading the monsoon mission project under the Ministry of Art Sciences. Currently, Tekhet Cotton University as a SARC Distinguished Fellow হিচাপে কৰ্মৰত হৈ আছে। প্ৰফেসৰ গোস্বামী বিভিন্ন আন্তঃৰাষ্ট্ৰীয় আৰু ৰাষ্ট্ৰীয় পৰ্যায়ৰ সন্মান লাভ কৰিছে। তাৰ ভিতৰত আটাইতকৈ উল্লেখযোগ্য হৈছে শান্তি স্বৰূপ ভট্টনাগৰ প্ৰাইজ। আৰু তেখেতৰ ৰিসাৰ্চ mostly focuses on various dynamical aspects and predictability of the Indian monsoon. Predictability of the Indian monsoons, and he likes to spend his leisure time with his family and reading fiction and thrillers. আৰু ইয়াৰ উপৰিও যেটো কথা মই আৰু উল্লেখ কৰিব খুজিছো যে তেখেত সেই সময়ৰ প্ৰি ইউনিভাৰ্চিটি এক্সামত ষষ্ঠ স্থানপ্ৰাপ্ত। আৰু তাৰ বাহিৰেও আজিৰ অনুষ্ঠানত বিদ্যুৎ আৰু মোৰ PhDৰ তেখেত co-supervisor আছিল। So welcome sir to our session.
Thank you Navanita, বহুত ধন্যবাদ। So মই অসমীয়াত ক'বলৈ অলপমান টান পাওঁ কাৰণ মোৰ ইমান অভ্যাস নাই অসমীয়াত টেকনিক্যাল কথা কোৱাৰ, তথাপি চেষ্টা কৰিম। অলপ ইংলিছ আৰু অসমীয়া মিলাই পেলাই ক'ম বাৰু। মই তোমালোকৰ এই সংস্থানত জড়িত হৈ পেলাই ভাল লাগিছে। আশা কৰিছো আমি অসমৰ ল'ৰা ছোৱালীবিলাকক অলপমান আমাৰ ক্লাইমেট চেঞ্জৰ যিটো ইম্পেক্ট হ'ব আমাৰ ৰিজিয়নত, তাৰ কাৰণে আমি কেনেকৈ নিজকে প্ৰিপেয়াৰ কৰিব পাৰোঁ তাৰ কাৰণে আমাক অলপমান আমি ডিছকাশ্যন আগবঢ়াব খুজিছোঁ ইয়াতে। তো তাৰ কাৰণে তুমি আৰম্ভ কৰা কোৱেশ্যন, দেন উই উইল সি how it goes.
Hi sir. Sir, আৰম্ভণিতে মানে আমি যেতিয়া কথা পাতিছিলো আৰু আপোনাক যেতিয়া ইয়ালৈ মাতাৰ মানে আমাৰ অনুষ্ঠানলৈ আমন্ত্ৰণ কৰাৰ কথা ওলাইছিলে তেতিয়া কেইটামান ঘটনাই like few incidents that's happening recently in Northeast India especially, তো সেইকেইটা কথাই মোৰ খুবেই বেছি like it attracted me a lot. তাৰ ভিতৰত এটা আছিলে যে যোৱা বছৰ ডিসেম্বৰ জানুৱাৰীৰ সময়ত হোৱা শ্বিলঙত হোৱা হেলষ্টৰ্ম, তাৰ পাছত আহিলে আপোনাৰ কাৰেন্ট সময়ৰ যিটো বৰষুণ মানে বানপানী, গুৱাহাটী আৰু অসমত শেহতীয়া যি বানপানীৰ পৰিস্থিতি হৈ আছে তাৰ পিছত চেঙা বৰপেটাত যোৱা মে মাহত হোৱা টৰ্নেডো আৰু আৰু শেহতীয়াকৈ যোৱা এসপ্তাহৰ আগত মণিপুৰত হোৱা লেণ্ডশ্লাইড সো এই গোটেইকেইটা ঘটনাৰ আলম লৈ পেলাই আজি আমি ডিসকাশনটো কৰিম আৰু সেইকেইটা ঘটনাৰ আলম লৈ আমি গোটেই ডিসকাশনটো ষ্টাৰ্ট কৰিব খুজিছো যে স্যাৰ whatever the incidents I have mentioned right now so আপোনাক যদি সুধো যে এই ইনসিডেন্টস বিলাক আমাৰ কাৰণে খুব abnormal বা rare incidents নেকি নে এইবিলাক নৰ্থ ইষ্টৰ হোৱা লাইক কিছুমান স্বাভাৱিক ঘটনা
I think the incidents you have mentioned, they are somewhat diverse, little bit different, but most of them are somewhat we can call sort of extreme events. And what we know about the climate change is that the extreme events are increasing, whether it is heat waves, whether it is rainfall, daily rainfall events. And the landslide that you mentioned, landslide is an impact of the extreme rainfall events and the particular geography and geology of this region. So therefore, these are all kind of extreme events. And the fact that these events are happening is possibly related to climate change, but simply by looking at but just a few events, instances, we may not be able to say that they are directly related to climate change. But climate change seems to have made these events happen more frequently than it would have happened in the absence of climate change or in the absence of the greenhouse gas forcing that we are experiencing today. So therefore, definitely, these events are essentially a result of, I think, the climate change has made them more frequent, but we need to actually study them more carefully. And there is around the world that these extreme events are now being attributed to attribution of these occurrence of extreme events to climate change, and what is the increase in the sort of probability of occurrence due to climate change has been studied. In Indian context, I think this is something that we need to do, and we have not done. I have not seen one study also just to see to do that, and especially for the Northeast region, since we are vulnerable to the hydrological disaster, because already we have more rain and more flooding events. And then if these flooding events become more frequent, then there is more hydrological disaster. So therefore, we should be more prepared for that. And whether they are due to the climate change or not, we need to attribute them. To attribute them, we need to do those studies. So that is one aspect that I am saying. But there are certain events that you mentioned, like the tornado in China, for example. So I think we really don't know what causes. This is also rather unusual. But the fact is that for tornado, there is not enough data, and there is not enough documentation in the region. What is the frequency of occurrence and where it could have occurred? Normally, we know that the tornadoes should not happen so frequently in our region because of the Himalayan mountains obstructing the cold air coming to our region, and the confluence of cold and warm air is actually very much required for forming a tornado. But suddenly, why a particular tornado happened in a very small scale, very energetic system happens in a place like Senga is something is very difficult to understand. Even I think most of the tornadoes, even in US, cannot be predicted very well, but we know where the conditions will be conducive because that is known. Therefore, certain warning can be given. But in our region, I think there is not that kind of studies are also missing. So this is something that we need to do. And in the future, since these seems to be happening more frequently, we need to also develop certain systems where we can gather more information about these systems like that. As far as the flooding events in this year, I think this is a combination of several different factors, and meteorological factors were definitely one important part, but the man-made factors were also responsible. meteorological impacts were very important because this year in April and May, both were much above rainfall. A large-scale rainfall was taking place in this region, which was much above normal. And that rainfall already filled up the dams. Okay, and in June again, there was a heavy rainfall spell. And at that point, there are certain barometer level was above normal, and therefore it was conducive for a flood. And then there is a big rainfall coming in spell. And at the same time, I think there are some certain dam water was released, and these two things made the impact of the flood very severe during the month of June. And at that point, of course, several embankments broke and the flood became much more severe in certain regions. So it's a combination of meteorological factors, but it made much more serious by man-made factors like the dams. I think the dam management must be a very important factor. I think my personal feeling is that we are not paying enough attention to the dam management. We are building dams after dams in this whole region. In the Northeast, we have about 8 major dams already operating in this region. And the amount of rain is so much in this region. The dams will fill up. And if you why we had all these rivers, the 40+ tributaries in this region, nature created it to drain the water out of this region. Now we have built all these dams. Obviously, dams will fill up. And if you don't let the dams out in appropriate manner, obviously you will create these disasters. So this is something that we need the policymakers also and the managers must recognize and must have a very professional, informed mechanism for dam management, and which is absolutely missing in this region. And I think this is something that our community must force the policymakers to take action on. So otherwise, we'll always be affected by these disasters. The other thing that I also feel is that that this flood disasters we are making much more serious because of all this the policy that we are following. The policy that we are following is the flood control policy, not flood living with flood policy. So I think we have to go from the flood control policy, which is a policy of making embankments and giving quick relief to the village which may be affected by, which has the potential for affected by flood. And then obviously at some point of time, every year these dams, these embankments break, again you break. Of course, this whole money spent on embankments is a waste, and it doesn't serve any purpose for the people, except in fact it serves a very negative purpose, because when it breaks, it produces severe flood in that region and damages property and even human loss. So I think considering the negative impact of an embankment, it is time for us to completely re-examine the flood control policy. You cannot control the flood in this. 𝐿𝑺 is such a river, and the amount of rainfall that takes place in this region is so large to drain the water. If you create obstructions, you might save some people somewhere, but it will be affected some more people in some other directions in a more severe way. So therefore, the whole concept of flood control is totally wrong, and we have to instead follow something like what I believe is living with flood policy. And living with flood policy can be done today. I think it's not new, but many I mean, I know some people had looked at it. Unfortunately, it has not gone to the policymakers' attention. so much. The fact, what we can do today with the technology that we have, if we can create a good system of flood forecasting, 24 to 48 hours advanced flood forecasting, and which can be done on a basin-wide scale, with just like our weather prediction system, we create a large-scale global weather prediction system, and then we have a regional weather prediction system inside them, like a regional model. So like that, we can have a basin-wide flood forecasting system, and within that, we can have a flash flood forecasting system inside these system itself. And therefore, you can do forecasting because today we have better data in terms of rainfall forecasting. We have better data in terms of DEM and all kinds of flow modeling. So all that is, I think, is kind of standard. All we need to put them into order and test the skill of this forecast with some real-time data from real data from Brahmaputra and its tributaries. So then we can put that into place and build some shelters, just like our tropical.
Sir, no, I know this thing is interesting, and we will again come to you, and we know that apuni flood level wood kini kam kori ase. So I want to basically discuss that part in detail.
Okay.
So moi hekarne apunak majate rakhaisu. So going back to those 4 incidents that we have picked up, 5, including the Manipur's landslide, 5 incidents. So sir, basically apuni etu kotha kole je he pasota incident, diverse incident, they cannot be like defined under one definition, meteorological.
Yeah, but they are all related to some extreme events, of some types, and mostly it is rainfall extreme events in this region. Rainfall extreme events, but that what you call tornado is slightly different. Tornado doesn't have rain, but it has wind and vortex, which produces damage. But that is a different. Apart from that, the other things are flood, landslide. They are all associated with rainfall extremes.
Yes.
So there, anyway, it is related to the extremes, and we know that the extremes are increasing, and yes, there is no doubt about it. With climate change. So therefore, and the probability of these events are increasing everywhere, and so is it happening over the Northeast. Now, what do we do about it? I think that is our. But what we are doing is doing what we should not be doing. For example, the landslide in Manipur. The landslide in Manipur is a result of mega development project, because they have brought in some huge development project, and that has cut down the hills, and the whole hill was so vulnerable. The huge rain, 100 centimeter rain that we are talking about, that rain in a day, that kind of a rain, just brought down the whole hill. It brought down the whole hill, and this was disaster waiting to happen. And this is not due to natural event. This is due to man-made.
Yes. So hekinita ki jani ami kotha to eneke kobo paro niki je those extreme events do exist in Northeast India. Ami extreme events bilak pao, including tornado. Kintu he bilakor repeating cycle je kiman bosoror pisat extreme event to je Shillong or hailstorm to hog ba Barsengar tornado hog ba khub besi prolong bane devastating banpani hog je ami kiman bosor more pam. Probably earlier his scale to it was a longer scale, probably not in our lifetime, kintu etia climate change or karone
frequently 10 বছর 20 বছৰৰ ভিতৰতে হৈছে এইবোৰ ইভেন্ট.
Yes, and we get to see lot of things. Karon mane sir moi kyo khuthi asu je we get questions je enekwa Shillongot eta borof porise niki. So jeta last time job mahat hoisile December January, I got few questions je Shillongot borof porise. Ba বহুত সময়ত এনেকুৱা ধৰণৰ social media এনেকুৱা ধৰণৰ বস্তু দেখা যায় যে okay, what is happening, like so many disasters incidents are happening so quickly. আমি ইমান বস্তু দেখি আছো এটা সময়ৰ ভিতৰত. So the point is যে extreme event বিলাক ঘটনাখিনি যেতিয়া নিজৰ time frame ত হয় নিজৰ টাইম স্কেলত হয় দেন ইটছ এ নেচাৰেল কিন্তু সেইটো যেতিয়া ফ্ৰিকুৱেঞ্চি বাঢ়ি যায় আননেচাৰেলি বাঢ়ি যায় তেতিয়া সেইখিনি ক্লাইমেট চেঞ্জৰ লগত ৰিলেটেড আৰু কনচিডাৰিং দ্য টেৰেইন where we are in North East India আমি যদি কোনো ধৰণৰ পলিচি ৰিলেটেড বা আমাৰ adaptation related আমি কোনো ধৰণৰ পলিচি সিস্টেম নলওঁ তেতিয়াহলে সেইখিনিৰ পৰা আমি suffer কৰিম
absolutely মই তাকে কৈছো যে climate change is happening and it is increasing the repeat time of all these extreme events and therefore we are feeling the impact of that even in our lifetime we are feeling them much more frequent in today in the last 10 years than it used to happen in the past 20-30 years. So this is a very clear signal. This is a real and imminent danger that we are facing. Now, main question is now, how do we prepare ourselves for adapting? This is not going to stop in the next 10 years or 20 years because of the global policies of all different stakeholders. Nobody is taking enough serious decisions that is needed to stop the emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. And we have already crossed the global mean temperature increase of about 1.25 degrees. And the increase of global mean temperature of 1.5 degrees is going to happen in the next 10 years or so. And therefore, in about next 20-30 years, we will, 20-30 or much before the end of the century, the global mean temperature is going to increase by more than 2 degrees. And I think this is almost certain now. Now, once the global mean temperature increases by more than 2 degrees, then we may be in a situation where even coming back will be almost impossible because historical, the paleoclimatic records indicate that once this global mean temperature increases above 2 degrees, then the feedbacks that keeps our climate stable. Like over the last 1 million years, our climate has been rather stable, where all these glacial and interglacial periods were alternating due to certain feedbacks within system. That requires the mean temperature to be at a certain level. And if you go beyond that, if 2 degrees above our before a sort of pre-greenhouse gas emission days, like pre-industrial days, then I think it is going to be impossible. So this is going to, in our lifetime, and also in our children's lifetime, the global mean temperature is going to keep on increasing, and these extreme events are going to increase. So there we are going to face more and more severe impact of these events. Especially Northeast is much more vulnerable because of the terrains, because of the amount of heavy rainfall that you already get, and because of the nature of the geology, the fluvial landscape, because very soft. So heavy rainfall produces much more landslide in this region than maybe in South India. So therefore, we are much more vulnerable. Now we have to prepare ourselves for adapting, how to adapt and reduce the impact of these events and for the people of the region. And that is where our adaptation policies are required. And that is where I was telling that we have to adapt, we have to prepare the people to be able to live with flood. And how can we prepare them? We can prepare them if we can produce shelters, enough shelters, and give a proper warning so that we can evacuate people 24 hours ahead of such flooding events. Then human loss and property loss can be minimized. The impact of these events will always be there. Just like when our ancestors also lived with flood, but their population was less, and by building with the population, we have built up the areas around our and the water bodies have been sort of built up So therefore, there is no place for water to collect, and we have built up over the channels through which the water was also draining out. But the amount of water is increasing, but the channels have reduced. So therefore, we are bound to face this problem. But how do we prepare the people? The only way you can prepare is produce shelters and evacuate them in time, give sanitation. So shelters can be built, in my opinion, and in a very simple way over the village schools. Convert the village schools into good grand facilities where the schools will benefit. Village schools are already needed. All the village schools need improvement. They don't have infrastructure. Just build the infrastructure there. Keep some good space for their play activities as well as evacuation activities when needed. So this will serve a double benefit purpose. And the money that we spent in embankments can be simply put in money building the shelters, and it will serve a much more beneficial and long-term benefit to the society. And we can produce good forecasts. Combine these two things can really have a much more beneficial effect for the people. Just like in tropical cyclone forecast. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
মানে আপুনি যিখিনি কথা কৈ আছে, it is essentially telling that আমাৰ policy maker আৰু scientist তেওঁলোকে একেলগে কাম কৰিব লাগে in tandem. So অসমৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত মানে আমি জানো যে অসমৰ state government already climate change they have taken seriously. There is a dedicated department to tackle take decisions related to climate change. At least that's what we have seen in tweeters of Honorable Prime Minister. So অসমৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত policy Chief Minister, policy maker or science. So what is the scenario?
Well, I don't know.
Sir, before আপুনি কোৱাৰ আগতে মই বিদ্যুতৰ কোৱেশ্চনটো আৰু অকমান ৰিফ্ৰেছ কৰি দিব খুজিছো যে আমি যেহেতু এনেকুৱা এটা ইনষ্টিটিউটৰ পৰা আহিছো য'ত আমি পলিচি মেকিঙৰ লগত ডাইৰেক্টলি ইনভলভ হৈছো, কাৰণ আমাৰ ফৰকাষ্ট IITMৰ পৰা আগতে গৈছিলে প্ল্যান চৰকাৰলৈ। সো এতিয়া কথাটো হ'ল যে বিদ্যুতৰ কোৱেশ্চনটো যদি ৰিফ্ৰেছ কৰো, সো এণ্ড ইফ উই মেক ইট মোৰ স্পেচিফিক, এনেকুৱা যে আমি সাইন্টিষ্ট হিচাপে কিমানখিনি ইনপুট পলিচি মেকাৰ্ছলৈ দিওঁ, কিমানখিনি ইনপুট পলিচি মেকাৰ্ছে আমাৰ পৰা একচেপ্ট কৰে, and how much they basically execute it?
Oh, actually, more experience. It বিষয়ে বহুত কম। মই আজি 4-5 বছৰৰ পৰা ইয়াত আছো, কিন্তু এতিয়ালৈকে মোৰ এক্সপেৰিয়েন্সৰ পৰা মই যিখিনি দেখিছো, there is very little confluence in terms of policymakers and the. I know there are certain meetings take place, but the policymakers seem to be happy with talking to some people already that exist here, and therefore they are not very much seem to be concerned about. So there is no real forum that where this. There are a few meetings sometimes. There used to be a Brahmaputra study center that was formed. There was a plan for a Brahmaputra study center at Gauhati University. I was part of that, but somehow the whole thing, and there in that connection, there are a couple of meetings where some of the government people were also involved, and then I had made a couple of presentations on that, but then it just completely somehow vanished from the, just like things in the Northeast happened. Somehow I don't see any activity in that.
Right.
So I'm not really sure how to go about it, but I think people who are really, so I am not an activist. I am a scientist, and I can only give input. If somebody does ask input, I'll give input, but I cannot go and tell people that you do this, you do that, and that is something that they have to be willing to hear. So, so that's my personal problem. So I cannot go and go after politicians and say that, listen, you should do this. and if they don't want to hear, then I cannot do much.
Right. Yeah, so mane eneke ami kobo paru that there is a actually huge gap exists between the scientists and the policy makers, which basically is not a good sign, especially for.
No, absolutely. I think there is also not only gap exists between scientists. I think there is also gap exists in the scientific expertise in this region.
Right.
And that is a big gap, as an equally big gap. So therefore, policymakers today are taking input from whoever is available. And in my feeling is that competent input is not sought, and then they're happy with whatever input they get. And that is a kind of difficulty that we have. And so we have to also create this the larger mass of competent experts, especially climate science. There is very little expertise in this region, almost zero expertise in this region. Hydrological field, there is a certain amount of expertise. That also, I believe, is not properly tapped by the government. So there are these gaps. There are certainly gaps in our gaps in our knowledge, gaps in the communication between the policymakers and the scientists. And so we have to have a much more comprehensive way of looking at it, looking at this problem. So somebody has to initiate a dialogue between policymakers and the scientists. We have to build up more expertise. That is the type of thing that I have been trying to do at Cotton to train youngsters on the climate science, so that we'll have more people to talk about what is the knowledge gaps. What is the knowledge gaps in this region about our climate? Because to understand the impacts also, we need to understand what is the climate variability in this region, what is the nature of the climate variability, and there itself a lot of knowledge gap is there.
Yeah, in terms of knowledge gap, I was just wondering, I mean, do you feel that science-wise also there is a lack of interest in the northeastern region? Like when we would study for the Indian monsoon, normally we would discard Northeast India, saying that it rains more, we cannot include it within the Central India zone. And that's what we have been telling for, like, that's what normally I have seen we do. But even despite having, like, there is a strong German group who works on paleoclimate, taking data from Northeast India. There is huge, like 9th largest river in Assam, flowing through Assam. There are like a lot of tributaries. Amar yate audience or majote enoko manu ase. I know some people are trying to map in detail the tributaries of Brahmaputra. They are in process of doing that. So iman khini naturally reach huar pisoto climatologically weather-wise. Tar pasoto, do you think it is underrepresented in the scientific community? If yes, why?
Yes, yeah, I think it is certainly underrepresented because I think we don't have enough people working from the Northeast in this region, okay? Whether in Assam or elsewhere, there are very few handful of people, right? That is one of the issues. The other issue is that indeed the Northeast region represents a rather small area in terms of the Indian monsoon world. The Indian monsoon is over the whole continent and Indian Ocean region. So of that, the Indian Assam represents a relatively small area. And that is why I think when people talk about Indian monsoon as a whole, they are happy with, even if there is no data, not enough data from this, they're happy with it that we can represent the Indian monsoon or study the Indian monsoon as well. And that is how we have been doing for a long time. But I think it is a mistake in the sense that although this is the region is small, the rainfall amount here is quite large, and therefore, even in the context of the global, the continental monsoon, it contributes about 13, 14, or 15% of the total rainfall, June to September rainfall, and that is quite large and is not small, and therefore we need to pay more attention. But the problem is that there is also, for studying the long-term variability in this region, there is not enough data, as you know yourself, had done some work some time back, and there are only few stations we can get long-term data because of the natural geography of this region, because of the hilly terrain. There has been very few data in the past. The rain gauge stations are not there. So therefore, it has been a problem for studying the past data in this region, past in the recent historical past. If you try to over the last 150 years, if you want to study this carefully, there is very little, only 7, 8, 10 stations you can get data, not more than that, and that itself is a limitation. So this has also made some scientists to refrain from going into details of these. This is a natural problem. So we don't have good data. But now, with some more data that we are collecting, we are beginning to understand this little better. The data set that we collected in this Northeast region with Cotton's Dr. Rahul Mohanto's help, and that is going to help us to represent the longer term variability much better. So therefore, that kind of effort is required to generate more reliable long-term data. That is one issue. As a result of this neglect of or lack of attention for various reasons, partly because data is not there, partly because it is a smaller region, partly because there are not enough, other people are more interested in looking at the larger scale picture and not going into details where there is less data. So this is how things have happened. And there is not enough of our people, the local regional people, who will doggedly take action and address this issue. That is not there. So these are all these various factors have affected. So I personally, after coming back to Cotton, I decided that I'll spend more time looking at this Northeast climate, and it's and that is what we have been trying to do over the last. And we are looking at its onset and the season, how to define the season properly, and collect more data to represent the monsoon. And so therefore it is important, because if the monsoon season itself here is not well defined. IMD just says that June 3rd to, according to IMD, onset takes place in June 3rd here in climatological onset over Northeast. I think this is real a problem, big problem. It is definitely not correct, and so we need to redefine it, because May to September is definitely a monsoon rainy season in this region. May rainfall in the Northeast is much larger than the June rainfall in central India. Therefore, can you not call it rainy season? It is definitely rainy season. So May to September is definitely monsoon rainy season. The question is how to define the onset. And there also we have a method to do that, and now we can do that. I don't want to go into details of that because it is a bit technical. But point is that if we don't define the rainy season correctly, then you are trying to find out how this climate is the climate is driven. Then you find correlations with June to September rainfall all over the place. It may not be correct, because that is not. And if you do not know what is the drivers are there, and then how can you predict the climate of this region? We cannot predict the climate of this region properly. So all this is a knowledge gap, and we need to fill those knowledge gaps. And that is what is required, because predicting the climate of this regional climate is also important for the region. And we have no effort today because I think even our seasonal prediction people don't validate here very much, because it's okay, chalta hai isme. We don't have to spend too much time over there, because first of all, data is not there, and the terrain is not properly represented in the models, and therefore the model, low resolution models will fail to represent the terrain, and as a result, it will definitely have biases in simulating the rainfall. So therefore, these are the issues. These are the regional, real important scientific issues of the region, and we have to address that. So therefore, a prediction system also must be developed, keeping these points in mind and these factors in mind, and develop it in that way. And I think this can be done slowly and steadily. I think we can do that. But interesting thing is that this region has a lot of interesting science. I mean, the climate itself has. We found out that in this region, the rainfall variability, that good data set that we talked about, we analyzed it more carefully, and we find that this region has the rainfall, there is no long breaks here, and or no long, last like in central India, you get a lot of long breaks. You never get long breaks here. And that is because it is dominated by is the 10 to 20 day oscillation rather than the 30 to 60 day oscillation. And this is sort of the clumping, it happens in big shots, clumps of few heavy events raining for about 5-7 days, and then sometimes up to 10 days, and then there is a short break, and then another event. And so these events actually produce a lot of rain. So there is science itself is different in this region, because again, orography plays a very important role in this.
Yes.
This region.
Yeah, this is interesting, but moi apunak just rakhab olaisilu when you went to 10 to 20 days oscillation, because we have, I mean, I would be all day interested to hear about those. Kintu amar majot I can see we have like obviously more participants than normally we do. So Nabonita, tomorrow Arup, if you have already questions, otherwise you can open the floor.
We will go back to question and answer session. I already got the request, but yeah, sare jikhini kotha kole je moi khali sir ami jetu prediction or kotha pati asu, ami apuni flood prediction or oporat kaam kori ase, mane jetar pora homole ahise bino.
Mane moi personally moi herit laga nai. I am not involved in flood prediction, but I am emphasizing, I am advocating. I'm advocating and trying to develop a system, and but I have not got sort of we need funding and sort of group from somebody to do that. And if funding is available, I think I can organize people.
Right.
To
So
develop funding is the main
problem.
Right. I think we need some funding.
Right. So moi actually apunak etu kotha khodibo khujisilu je again going back to the those 5 events we have already mentioned, jiketa kotha kolu sir, tar bitorat ami predictioner boli kote kisuman kotha ami jeneke palu je tornado rare nohoy, নতুন ঘটনা নহয় কিন্তু বহুত হয়, কিন্তু বা কিছুমান ঘটনা যেনেকে extreme events, rainfall extreme events is happening more frequently. So sir, মোৰ কথাটো হল যে এনেকুৱা ধৰণৰ diverse events বিলাক যেহেতু আমাৰ মাজত আপুনি already কৈছে যে data কম, knowledge gap আছে, আৰু আমাৰ geographically আমাৰ region to like it's different from rest of the India, but it's like really significant. So মোৰ কথাটো হল যে considering all these factors plus there is a knowledge gap between the scientists and the policy makers, and also more experience অভিজ্ঞতাৰ পৰা মই ক'ব খুজো যে common public বহুত সময়ত আমি কওঁ যে social media বা সাধাৰণ মানুহে এইবিলাক ঘটনা কলি যুগৰ ঘটনা বা অভিশাপ বা কিবা এটা পৃথিৱী সলনি হৈছে ধ্বংস হ'বলৈ কৈ আছে, এনেকুৱা ধৰণৰ ঘটনা কিছুমানক কৈ থাকে। সো এতিয়া মোৰ কথাটো হ'ল যে ইমানখিনি ইস্যুজ এক্সিষ্ট কৰাৰ পাছত climate change is happening in real time, and their impact is also happening in real time. So those two are like truth, and that is happening in real time. So iti amar kotha to hol je ami kene koi kuntu steps are apuni bhabe je a particular step could be the initial step as a scientist for us. We can start from here, aro
so
we can yeah, we can address
to my question to is it related to solving the climate change problem, or it is related to adapting? The solving the climate change problem is a separate issue altogether.
Yes.
And that is where also we all can contribute, but that requires larger policies on an intergovernmental and the global level. So I did not go into that because I have some ideas on that also, but people may not like it at all because but I think on a regional, I mean, individual level, I think we can contribute to that definitely. I think globally, just I'll say very briefly that globally, I think unless we can cut down the energy demand, total today, in the name
no,
of
sir. আমি solution-লৈকে নাযাওঁ আমি keeping adaptation in mind আৰু আজিকেটা special and then northeast India, not even rest of the India, northeast India considering its vulnerability,
right?
আমি কোনটো আপুনি কেনেকে suggest কৰে যে okay according to আপোনাৰ, not necessarily it should be like something everybody should agree upon, কিন্তু মোৰ কথাটো হৈছে যে আপুনি কেনেকে ভাবে যে okay we can immediately start from this particular point, probably knowledge gap decreasing হ'ব পাৰে বা communication বঢ়োৱাটো হ'ব পাৰে, educating people হ'ব পাৰে, that could be anything. I'm just asking আপোনাৰ মতামতটো কি?
I think we have to do several things simultaneously. One is we have to work on gathering new knowledge of what is the quantitative nature of these impacts going to be in the coming years. So how much more it will be, how frequent it will be, and how and going into particularly into the flood intensity and flood inundation level. So how much area will be covered, how much more area will be covered, how much deeper it will be. These are issues that we need to quantify. So that will help us to prepare ourselves how we can produce the adaptation measures. So that is a very important thing, but there is very little work going on in this area, and I think none of the experts can give quantitative numbers of what and how, and such a quantitative and reliable estimates of these requires a lot of work, and that is required, and that is one thing we need to do. Simultaneously, we should prepare all these adaptation measures that I mentioned, that like building shelters and flood forecasting, etc. So those things also we have to continue. And the flood forecasting today, just like our weather forecast today, may not be very, very successful, but we should put a system in place, and then continuously improve it, just like we are doing the weather prediction. Weather prediction over the last 50 years have steadily and slowly and steadily improved, and today it is much more reliable. And that is going to happen even for flood forecasting. But we need to start. So we need to start with that. So start with a good flood forecasting, whatever flood forecasting system that we can put in, start with it and improve as we go on. Okay. And then we need to do preventive measures to the extent that is possible. So I think with the population increasing, there is a lot of constraints. But I think I think we have to make a certain amount of, if we have to live with this, we need to make a certain compromises in terms of development. What we call development today. The development is breaking up our hills and mountains, cutting them, creating more vulnerability for landslide. We must stop it. In the name of development, we cannot do this. I think the prevention is the best. If you keep on doing this, it will never happen. The rainfall events are going on increasing, and you're still cutting these hills, and therefore landslide is going to increase. So how will you stop it? You cannot stop it unless you start reducing that and completely cut down those. So there is certain big policies is required in terms of change in development strategy. And this is a major point in terms of globally also. but locally it is much more important. So therefore, I think we need to convey this to, and the public sentiment should be created so that the and public we should be also so the policymakers said that okay, this development will create jobs and blah blah, and we will have development, this that, more jobs will be created, people will get sort of remuneration, and therefore they will be able to live better. But I think this is a misnomer, and this is not going to happen. And therefore, and we should say that we will be willing to sacrifice that. Let us forget the local people should be also willing to sacrifice that. Will sacrifice development. I traveled to Nagaland. I was very happy that they have resisted this development for a long time, and I think this today also the village people have the control over the land, and that is why not much is cutting, not much is damaged, and they are developing a certain sustainable way of living. So they have certain this alder trees in this Nagaland is apparently such a sustainable way of producing not only firewood and things like that, and they also create certain business, for example, the matchsticks and all that. But it also creates fertility of the land. So it's a very so you can have grow things which are much better. So there are I think the old ways of you have to go back to nature a little bit and find out better sustainable ways of development. And in that process, a certain amount of sacrifice will be required because the population has increased tremendously. But we should be prepared to do that sacrifice, and those policies need to be put in place. I think I see Roxy with a hand.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, yes, sir. Our question answer khini শেষ কৰিছো, and we are really glad. Our basically কথাখিনি এনেকুৱা যে we are like circling in a circle. So everybody is connected to everyone. So there cannot be a gap. যদি আমি প্ৰবলেমটোৰ লগত এডজাষ্ট কৰিব খোজো। আৰু so আজিৰ আমাৰ ফালৰ পৰা আমাৰ ডিসকাশনটো ইয়াতে সামৰিছো। Then we are going back to the question and answer. আৰু starting from Roxy. So please raise your hand if anyone asks, কোনোবাই যদি কিবা question সুধিব খোজে তেতিয়া হলে, or just unmute.
Yeah, thanks for this detailed discussion. I was happy to hear you after so long, BNG, and good to see you talking about climate change and what our actions and all that we can take in the light of the floods happening around Northeast and all these regions. So one of my question is about data, and you already talked about it. So I'm not sure how relevant it is, but still I want to extend that discussion. So as you say, I also agree that a lot of these extreme rainfall events in Northeast and probably in the Western Ghats are also tied up very much with the orographic nature of of these regions. Yeah. So as climate change is going unabated, there is more moisture. So this orographic or the topography provides that element for high orographic rainfall. So the question is, especially in the Northeast region, I see this over the Western Ghats region also, there are many regions which are not well observed, well monitored. No data is collected. Until recently, recently IITM scientists came up with a station in 𝗏𝘆 in Maharashtra, which is one of the stations with largest rainfall happening, annual rainfall happening in India. Yeah, almost competing with the rainfall measurements in Northeast in some years, which means, and this is a recent station, which means that across India, particularly in Northeast, there might be many stations, many regions where we have not even measured the amount of rainfall, extreme rainfall that has happened. Even this might have happened in the recent Northeast floods also. So how much are we limiting our understanding due to this lack of data availability, and how much how can we improve this situation? For example, national agency like IMD has limitations. Maybe up to a district level they can measure. Even at district levels, they are not measuring at many regions in regions like Northeast. So how can we enhance our observing systems such that it can increase our understanding and also the forecasting also? That's my
okay. So your one question is that we can definitely improve the current observing system, definitely, and that is also lacking. I'll tell you what we can do, but we cannot go back and create data in the past, because the Arunachal Pradesh and few other regions are completely in Nagaland some places, and Arunachal in some places. These are regions impossible to put in a rain gauge, and you cannot simply and in the past data is absolutely not there. You cannot get. So therefore there is no way you can do that. But for extreme events you need daily data, and you need a reasonably good coverage in this region. And until very recently, the IMD data had a very big problem. I don't know if you have looked at that. Both Pai et al. Data as well as Rajivan et al. Data, graded data, has only about 12 or 15 stations that have actually even more than 12 stations, not more than 30 years of data is available.
Yeah.
And and in that there is another problem we should recognize. The problem of including Cherrapunji. Cherrapunji is an outlier, and it is such an outlier that if there is a big gap, this will create a huge problem in terms of extreme event counts or whatever. And climatology as well, even in climatology. So in climatology, because of the gaps in Cherrapunji data, their climatology gives a lot of artificial multi-decadal variability. So it is completely wrong. So it is a huge problem. So we had recognized this problem quite some time back, and over the last 10 years we have been working on this, and we collected now at least 24 stations. We have created a data set, daily data set for 90 years.
Okay.
Now 24 stations, which includes much more than, but these are all IMD stations only, because these stations. I mean, we thought that at least we can use whatever data that IMD has and then fill the gaps from some other source. But unless there is data somewhere, how can you fill it up? You cannot. So, but fortunately in Assam there are lot of tea gardens. Now tea gardens are dependent on rain gauge. And they have a personal rain gauge in most of these big tea gardens, and they have kept journal records of rainfall for many years. And some of them have 90 years of record, and some of our students have, and Rahul Mohanta and his students have gone. And I initiated this problem more than 10 years ago, and finally,
this is wonderful information.
Yes, it is published. One climatic change paper has come out, and this data I can share with you guys, anybody. It is free. So we can give you that. So this is, I think, is wonderful data, because to study this has made a much better data set to study at least the statistics of the extreme events. This was just not possible, and this is and also this has to be a fixed network stations. The IMD's Pai et al. Data is not a fixed network station, and variable network will mess up your extreme event statistics completely, and therefore that is not advisable. Even if the total number of extreme events is still less, if you fix the network, your variability will be reliable. Variability and trend will be reliable. Therefore, this is a fixed network station for 24 stations, and it covers most of the valley with little bit of the hilly regions. And I believe it is much more reliable, because if you see we have missed only 1 or 2 points of extreme heavy rainfall. So you can compare this climatology of this rainfall with TRIM. TRIM at least gives me what is the climatology over these And the extreme event statistics is very much dependent on climatology. Higher the higher the rainfall, there will be more extreme events in some sense, right? So I think we are now at a much better stage to at least give a estimate of the extreme event variability. Total number of extreme events will still be limited by unavailability of data in the other regions.
Okay. I think in the interest of time, we will have to interrupt. I can see Melinda apunar.
So basically, BNG kothakini jodi ami saro kothakini okoman summarize kori diu. Melinda, I will just take 5 or 10 seconds. So kotha to hol je, yes, we have a data gap in the northeastern region, but it is a process sir arambho hoise boli ami kobo paru for the common public je to fill up the data gap. যে ডাটা নাই যদিও বেলেগ বেলেগ ধৰণে আপোনালোকে ডাটাখিনি এৰেঞ্জ কৰিবলৈ বা এটা কনভিনিয়েন্ট ডাটা সেট ক্ৰিয়েট কৰিবৰ কাৰণে চেষ্টা কৰি আছে so yeah that's actually a process already has been started initiated yes Melinda
the move question to N-qa that bahir dekhot generally dekho de social problem ta ase the problem to kunba eta ta upor PhD kore paper kore tapso hey information kini loi tapso mane paper khon kunba PhD koile he paper khon ami maybe the government or the official or some organization use it, implement it and move on. Our society improve on. Our এতিয়া বহুতে PhD কৰি আছে কোনবাই study কৰি আছে Assam flood, Gauhati flood হৈ আছে and it become like normal. That's our normal. Assam flood was become the normal. But I'm sure that many people are studying. Hey, study বিলাক আমি কেনেকে access কৰিব পাৰো বা community আমি কেনেকে যাব পাৰো আমি মানে আমাৰ maybe NGO কথা কৈছো বা because বাহিৰত তেনেকে দেখিছো US ত master gardening program. For example, university for gardening cover DD knowledge hoy, certain 400 volunteers say, buji loy, samajor logot kam kor. And through farmers market hotline so that people get this information. You do study hoise hebo manho accessible hoy. Amar ki koribo para jay jate ei flood or ki solution hoise. Are the government listening to it? If they are not listening, with the public getting the knowledge, what could you do so that public get the knowledge so that with these PhDs and all that, society could improve goes to the next level. When I hate to put more flood, I'm just tired of it. We have so many scientists and so many smart people. How could we make the government also accountable? What else should we know? What are the questions should the public ask? What are our rights so that we can make government and ourselves accountable?
So that is what I was telling, that there is a lot of we claim that there is a lot of studies on flood, but I did my own research and I find there are very few studies on flood and very well documented studies. So people keep saying that I have studied this, I have studied that, but there is very little documented. As you said, well documented studies are missing. And even when we do, the study is limited to one place. So we need a basin-wide flood, basin-wide study. Hey, knowledge gap. Our basin-wide flood or study to khub bhalke nai. Our head documented corner. I think we need a good study of that also. And this can be studied today as amar rainfall data bahut bhal data available hoy satellite pora amar 20 bochoror data ase ei 20 bochoror data satellite data loi pele ami study koribo paru ei amar ei region tot keneki kot kiman flood hobo pare ei bostur eta comprehensive study koribo paru ar hey study kori kontu flood large amar flood duta bostu ase eta hol large scale flood ei flood to mane mahe eta flood ahi সেইটো আমাৰ সেই atmospheric conditioner লগত এটা ৰিলেটেড আছে আৰু এটা ফ্লাড আহে ফ্ল্যাশ ফ্লাড টো মানে লোকেলি হয় যত কিটা থান্ডাৰষ্টৰ্মৰ নিচিনা ইভেন্ট এটা হয় আৰু সৰু এটা ট্ৰিবিউটাৰীৰ ওপৰত যদি পৰিলে সেই বস্তু পানীখিনি তেতিয়া সেইটো ওলাই যাতে টান হৈ পেলাই তাতে এটা ডাঙৰ ফ্লাড হৈ যায় সো So both the things we need to study comprehensively over the whole basin. And there is not a single study that has been done to do this. In fact, we can have a model lage amak je ei flood to hole a model to এই ফ্লাড পানীখিনি কেনেকৈ কোনফালে লৈ যাব তাৰ কাৰণে মডেল এটা লাগে সেই মডেলটো থাকিলে আমি এই যে ৰেইনফলৰ ডাটাটো আমাৰ আছে স্যাটেলাইটৰ পৰা আজি 20 বছৰৰ খুব বঢ়িয়া ডাটা আছে এই ডাটাখিনি লৈ পেলাই আমি এটা কম্প্ৰিহেনসিভ ষ্টাডি কৰিব পাৰো আৰু কৰিলে যে এটি কোনটো এৰিয়াত ফ্লাড বিলাক মোৰ ভালনাৰেবল আৰু কোনটো এৰিয়াত নট এইবোৰ খুব আইডেন্টিফাই কৰিব পাৰো এই ভালনাৰেবিলিটি ষ্টাডিও কোনবাই কৰিছে কিন্তু এইবোৰ সব হটস্পটস কোনো এটা মানে কম্প্ৰিহেনসিভ এণ্ড সাইন্টিফিক্যালি based study to নাই সেইটো আমাৰ ডাঙৰ নলেজ গ্যাপ সো দেয়াৰ আৰ লট অফ নলেজ গ্যাপ আপুনি শুনিব ফ্লাডৰ কথা বহুত কিন্তু যদি আপুনি খুধে কাৰবা আপুনি কি কৰিছে এটা মানে হ মই হেই খুবনখিৰিত অলপ মানে এটো চাইছিলো আমত এবছৰৰ এটা চাইছো আমক সেইটো কৰিলে কেনেকৈ হ'ব এটা কম্প্ৰিহেনসিভলি চাব লাগিব এটা ৰিলায়েবল হ'ব লাগিব ডাটাখিনি আপুনি কি কৰিছে so teneke gotike there is a lot of knowledge gap so I think we need to build that knowledge gap and for that we need to sponsor focused studies I think government need to focus that aru apuni koise je government te hunisine na government e hunatu moi to moi believe nokoro karon government is happy with taking advice from some cronies that they want. They don't want advice from anybody else. So they're happy with what they're getting because I know that flood forecasting that people are giving today are useless because they're very bad. They have not been validated. And they're saying that we are 70-80% are accurate. And everybody believes that is not science. 70% validate hole tumi data di pela dekhwab lagibo. ইমান বছৰত কিমানটা পার্সেন্টেজ কেনেকে আৰু কোয়ান্টিটেটিভলি কব পাৰিব কিমান এৰৰ হৈছিলে কোনেও দেখুৱা নাই everybody says we are because that is something space based organization government believes but this is not science so if government wants to believe unscientific input then you can't help much so there is this problem there is knowledge gap at the same time there is apathy or insincerity in terms of government bodies to do something good, really good. And so I think this is the problem. So we have more than one problem. So we have to
basically sir apuni jitu kotha koisile again at the beginning of apuni jitu kotha koisile je in events be like diverse but they are connected somehow so yato ekata kotha khate yes we have like lot of problems lot of gap I think basic gap is the knowledge gap je bibhinno stakeholder major amar jibilak knowledge gap ase so he knowledge gap bilak jodi ami address nokoru amar hatot eneka problem bilak I mean including the scientist fraternity not only other stakeholders including the scientist fraternity so we all need to come to the same platform discuss what knowledge gaps we have we need to have like we really need to listen to other people kar kenekwa thoronor ki problem hoy ase kot kenekwa so yes I think that's the thing Milinda aha koru apuni apunar answer to paise or if you want then you can just discuss with him
actually especially for like being one of the hosts I would like Anajori to continue the dialogue with BNG in future as well because Anajori has the intent and BNG can of course guide all of us to pursue in that direction so Mohenda apunar hatot 2 minute ase hunkale khudok
no মই আসলে হেল্ল' স্যাৰ নমস্কাৰ স্যাৰ মহেন স্যাৰ মই মানে মই বিদ্যুতকো এইটো কথা আগতে কৈছিলো ধৰি লওক আপোনাৰ নিচিনা মানুহবিলাকক যেতিয়া আপুনি মাতো আমি ইয়ালে মানে ইন্টাৰেকশ্যনৰ কাৰণে at the same time maybe somebody from the government sector who can listen to your words they should come to the same platform so that they take your words to the policy makers at least put to their ears
yes that's a really good suggestion Mohinda because I think Nobonita wanted to declare it formally or not exactly formally যে আমি এনেকুৱা ধৰণৰ আলোচনা BNGও আমাক আমাৰ এই সেশনটো আৰম্ভ হোৱাৰ আগতে কৈছিলে This is like kind of first of a series of talks that we will be coming back to BNG and people like you for আপুনি যেটো কথা ক'লে যে অকমান এডমিনৰ ফালৰ মানুহ যোনে খিনি কথা শুনিব পাৰে আৰু প্লাছ টু ৰিড হাউ ডু উই এডাপ্ট আৱাৰসেলভছ especially in the northeastern region and yeah so that is the motive আৰু হেতু লৈ পেলে আমি এনেকুৱা এটা series based discussing adaptation
series basically
sub series
yes.
So that we are planning and BNG has actually informally agreed to at least suggest us. So
yeah, we will probably invite him for another session on adaptation and then we will discuss it.
That is like ami amar agorbar Sanjay Sharma sir matisilu and we actually had good discussion on putting Northeast as a hotspot of research in the global map by doing some sort of intense observation campaign if possible, like observing pre-monsoon even if we target for pre-monsoon season, which is nowhere there in India, like we target for pre-monsoon
I'm sorry to interrupt. আমি already 10 minute exit কৰিছো আৰু আমি another 1 minute মান ল'ব লাগিব, so why don't we have this discussion after finishing it for another couple of minutes. So yeah, so we won't be able to take further question. যদি কাৰোবাৰ কিবা question আছে kindly আমাৰ এনাজৰি যেটো ফেসবুকৰ লাইভ এটা চলিব আপোনালোকে তাতে দিব, question বিলাক আমি BNG লৈ পঠাম আৰু he will address. So তাৰ আগতে সেশনটো শেষ কৰাৰ আগতে মই বিদ্যুতক আজি সেশনটোৰ এটা সামাৰি চমুকৈ দিবলৈ ৰিকুৱেষ্ট কৰিছো.
Okay, thank you Novanita, and thank you all of you for being here, or thank you BNG. আমি actually বহুত কথা পাতিলো. BNG started with a statement that Ohomar student bilakok or common publicok how to prepare them for the changing climate. We started with that. Then we started with some examples like Sengar tornado or Shillong or rainfall. So then we discussed like climate change or karone teneka dhoroner extreme events or repeat duration to komi goise, but they are becoming more frequent. But of course a part of it is natural. So BNG jitu kotha kole je attribution study is lacking. Attribution study amar tat kom hetu hobo lage aru banpanir khetrot one statement we had was dam management to ami improve koribo lage, and there should be a flood forecasting system basin wide study hobo lage, not looking at one tributary or isolated spaces. Then we talked about there is being a gap between scientists and the policymakers, the government, and among scientists itself. And BNG mentioned that there is lack of a real forum to discuss these things on a regional scale, especially in the Northeast. There is a lack of research in Northeast due to a natural limitation on data availability, and BNG mentioned they are intensely working on gathering more and more data. And so finally 3 quick immediate steps jitu BNG college, not quick but immediate steps. One is to quantitative and reliable assessment of climate impact, and second ekhini basically summary of the session, that flood forecast system to start it, even if badly, but start it. There will be limit errors, but we should start with a flood forecasting system. And something BNG mentioned is certain compromises we need to do in terms of our development. We need to carefully assess the impact before doing any development. And he mentioned we maybe Assam can learn, or Northeast can learn from some of the villages in Nagaland, which he personally experienced. And yeah, I think that's almost what I could summarize. I'm sure there are gaps.
That's okay. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you, Navanita. I'm good, but thank you very much for having me, and I enjoyed interacting with all of you. So I hope we have some impact on and trying to fill the knowledge gap, and hopefully maybe some of the ideas, if it goes to the policymakers, I will be grateful. But if it has even a little impact on the policymakers, that will be something that I will be extremely happy about.
Yeah, that's the aim. Any impact on a social scale is a damped impact. So we will be hitting again and again, inviting you again and again, and so that the impact doesn't damp out.
Yeah. So এইখিনিতে আজি আমাৰ সেশনটো শেষ কৰিছো, as we promised, যে আমাৰ সেশনটো এনেকুৱা ধৰণৰ এডাপ্টেশনৰ পৰা সেশন আমি কন্টিনিউ কৰিম, আৰু সেইখিনিতে ইয়াকে okay, you have anything to say?
Oh no, actually BNJ session to summarize কৰোতে something I wanted to announce that BNG যিটো ইনষ্টিটিউটৰ ডিৰেক্টৰ আছিল IITM not to promote atmospheric science research among the people of Northeast India. Dr. Mohan Koraমাৰ পৰা মই জানিব পাৰিলো আজি actually যে IITM is planning to host 4 students who are studying atmospheric science for 2 months intern in IITM. They will be staying in IITM and doing research with IITM scientists, and that is targeted specifically for Northeast students, and this will be sponsored by DST. So for more details, amar jihokol dorke Facebook ore video to sabo ba etia sai ase. For more details teloke amar logot contact koribo pare ba IITM or Mohan Koranar logot contact koribo pare.
Yeah, তেওঁলোকে আমাৰ লিংকটোৰ তলতো যদি এটা কমেন্ট কৰে, সো আমি IITM ৰ লগত তেওঁলোকক কন্টাক্ট কৰাই দিব পাৰিম। সো এইখিনিকে কৈ আজি আমাৰ সেশনটো সামৰিছো, আমি অলৰেডি 17 মিনিট পাৰ কৰিছো। সো so it was a very good session, sir. Thank you so much. মই বাকি সকল পাৰ্টিসিপেন্টক ষ্টেজটো এৰিবলৈ ৰিকুৱেষ্ট কৰিছো, স্যাৰ আপুনি অকমান দেৰি থাকক আমাৰ লগত, আৰু মহেন্দা আপুনি যদি এই পাৰ্টিকুলাৰ ডিসকাশনটো আগবঢ়াব খোজে, then
sure.
okay, so yeah.